And that is something I want to change to an extent. I just haven't really figured out the full holistic story I want to tell around that. Like this is a prong of it for sure, but I feel like the climbing is a prong of it, jiu-jitsu is a prong of it. Like how do I really bring all this together and then see if that's worth pursuing?
I feel like this is the episode right now.
We can go with that.
Yeah, I feel like because I have some thoughts on this. And that is that, I was thinking about, I had this moment where, so in life, and there's a dynamic that exists. And I was thinking about two different examples of it. One of them, and this is one, I'll use the second one to jump into like where I went with this, but I'll tie this all up. This will all come back around and you'll see how I got here. But I was looking at a car in front of me today. It was a early 2000s Maxima. I know for the 2000 year model, Nissan, they changed, they did like a redesign as you do every few years. And I was trying to remember because I used to be a big fan of the Maxima. My first car was a 95 Maxima. Loved it. Anyway, the thought, it's like if you buy a car, you can get, a few trim, there's usually 3 or 4 trim levels. And I was just thinking about, you can have like the response to, you can look at that as say, well, there are multiple trim levels because there are certain features that people just don't want and they don't want to pay for them. And it's like, how do I get this car that I want? Because you might be like, you might think, oh, this Maxima has, it's got the shape, I like the way it looks. I like the engine that it has. I like, you could like all the things about it, but it's like, there's like, $10,000 worth of frou-frou that I don't want to pay for. And so you can get a lower trim. Same thing. Like I was thinking about this with like my 4Runner. There's it's interesting because there's now I think there's 7 trim levels for the 4Runner in the 2022 year. But for a long time it was, or at least the generation I have, there were 3. It was like SR5, which was the base. There used to be a base in SR5. Sport edition, and then a limited. And so, just, you can think, okay, I want this and this, and, and I want these things right here, this combination of things and fewer amenities. And it can be just a practical, I've gone way too long about how trim levels equate to a certain level of practicalness. And you want to I want this car, but with fewer amenities, so I pay less for it. Or you can look at it and say, oh, well, this is a way, I have this car, but there is a higher trim level of the car, and it's a way of looking at it like, well, I just couldn't afford the better car, or the better trim level. And anyway, that got me into like the other thing that I thought about was like airplanes and flights. It's like there's I can't remember what's below basic. There's economy, basic economy, comfort and like first class, and then bigger flights that have even a higher first class, and business class and all the things. And I was just like, I had a moment where I was like, I'm feeling inadequate because I don't. It would be irresponsible of me to spend my money on a first class upgrade, even though I really want it. Like I have the money, but I'm not. It would be just a bad idea for me. I'm not going to spend that much money on it. And I was thinking about, in that moment, I was like, I feel like a lower class, like I feel inferior or a lower class citizen. And it got me into thinking about like, what could I do? Like, what sort of endeavor could I pursue to make a lot of money? Like a lot of money. And I thought about the, how everybody, we mentioned a bunch of people were doing the same thing, and a few people got really lucky. And I think about the guy who developed Flappy Bird. Do you remember Flappy Bird?
Well, and wasn't the like $1 million press a button app? Am I misremembering the price?
No. It was $9.99. It was $999, and it was called Bling. So, it was called Bling.
Yeah, $1,000.
Yeah, but still, and only 6 people bought it, and Apple pulled it and refunded everyone.
Oh, I didn't realize they did refund everybody. But still, I mean, the concept was pretty much the same.
Yeah, but the guy, I remember, like at the height of Flappy Bird, and it lasted a while, but the guy was pulling down something like $300,000 a week. You just need like a short, I think that it went on for like 2 or 3 months where he was making this kind of sale, and I was like, that's a lot of money. And
yeah, that's enough that if you play it right, you are at least relatively financially set for quite a long time.
Right. I mean, if you could live a modest life for 10 years and never do anything. Or you could even like invest it and do even better. There's that kind of capital could be, it's life-changing. And so I sat and I thought about, like, could I make something that could become a Flappy Bird? Maybe. Will it become a Flappy Bird? Pretty unlikely. But it got my brain moving, and it made me think of a thing I might try to do.
A thing you want to go into or avoid going into?
A thing I might try to do. Make.
Okay.
That's
that's what I was getting at. I just wasn't sure how far I wanted to take the probing. As you were describing it, one of the things that came to mind, or as you were talking about the trim levels, one of the things that came to mind was thinking about the start of this conversation, where I was talking about the different endeavors and what I was looking at as different prongs of those endeavors, and trying to figure out what ties it all together. I think that's the question. Like, the endeavors would be the trim levels. What ties it all together is still the missing piece, which would be the vehicle itself. And it's interesting that analogy, for some reason or another, drove that level of clarity when other analogies have so far not sufficed. But it did get me to thinking more about, like, we've relatively recently, come to the conclusion that, more apparent conclusion that of what this podcast really is, right? And it's a feelings podcast about things, and sometimes it's current events, sometimes it's other things, but it's not trying to be more than our thoughts and feelings on something. Right. Generally speaking, all of my endeavors revolve around being a middle-aged guy trying to do things. Why isn't that necessarily the car? A middle-aged guy getting in shape, a middle-aged guy pursuing challenges, that kind of thing. Like, why not embrace the simplicity of, yes, I'm another everyday average person in many regards, and you're looking for inspiration for your next thing. And for a few people, I could certainly provide that. For a few more people, maybe it'll be hey, that sounds kind of interesting, and maybe that's the end of my reach, right? But that could be a path of exploration, and I'm wondering, as I'm outlining it, whether that's not the overly simple but also like the unifying answer. I mean, realistically, if you think about it, what was the impetus for the conversations? It was the lack of general, normal, routine social interaction.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't trying to fulfill anything overly fancy at first. We just kind of got to the point where we wanted it to have some reason for existing and something to fulfill. So what's the with all the other activities, we'll just pick on climbing as the specific example, that alone is all about getting in shape in some way, shape, fashion, or form. Why not embrace that as the other part of it? And it's not even just about getting in shape, but it's also about the practical mental challenges and being able to overcome problems and solve things in front of you. I don't know, a lot of rambling, I think, or I feel like it's a lot of rambling.
Oh, I
felt like
truly, but I felt like I was rambling as well. It's like, I'm going long here.
Well, it's one of those things that these conversations tend to provide those thoughts anyway, because there's not a clear, this is what we expect in like 10 minutes to come up with.
Right. Yeah. You know, it kind of goes back, you know, so what you were just saying kind of reminded me of a episode or two ago when we were talking about mental blocks, and there's no, you know, like the people who are seemingly lucky or have, so let me back up just a bit. There's a statistic I heard, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it doesn't matter what the number is, but the statistic I heard was like 80% of small businesses fail. But if you go and look around, it's like 100% of small businesses are open, you know? And it's like, you don't, you know, unless you're there and you see a business come up and go away, you know, you don't really necessarily notice all the failing small businesses because they don't stay around. And where was I going with this? You can't, I made a comment about like, there are people who are seemingly fall into greatness maybe. But you can't, that can't happen to you, or that usually doesn't happen to you unless you're already putting in the hard work. Like for all of the folks that are putting in the hard work, there's a fraction of a percent that we'll hear about, because we don't hear about the majority of the people, because there's only a very small space where you have people that come to some level of notoriety, or like, let's just say national notoriety. And so there's this balance of like, this idea, if you're doing it for the end goal and becoming the person that has all of this notoriety, then that's probably not the right reason, and you probably won't fail. Now, that doesn't mean that can't be a goal of yours, but if that's the main goal, I don't think it works that way. You have to be doing all of the other stuff first.
There were two things that came to mind as you were going through that. One, at first I thought you were going with the more recognizable, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, quote from Gretzky.
Yeah.
Which is certainly true.
Yes.
But just had to get it on record. The big piece, though, like overall what you were describing, goes back to Simon Sinek's TED Talk about the Golden Circle. People don't respond to what you do. They respond to why you do it. And that's true across the board. So notoriety could very well be an end product or end goal, just like profit is an end product and end goal.
Right.
It's not why you do something. Why you do something has to be something that you believe in that will carry you through those times when you don't feel like continuing. But you do so because you believe in it.
Right. There's probably not just one reason that you do something. There's probably half a dozen reasons why you do a thing. Profit being one of them.
So, not to necessarily put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. That being said, what do you think is why you have in any real capacity considered this question?
Oh, there have been a few things that I've thought to do. And it's not like I haven't done them because I'm It's not out of laziness. It's that I'm sitting here and it's like, I don't want to try to repeat what everyone else has already done. Which at one point I feel like I was doing that, at least personally in my head, was doing that with this podcast. And it was really that the conversation when I realized that this was a feelings podcast, I felt like we were searching for a voice and searching to be a certain thing. And once you and I had that conversation about it, I was like, oh, I don't feel like I'm searching any longer. And this gets to be what it is. And now that I know what it is, I feel good about moving forward. Like, I don't feel bad. It's like, oh, if you listen to that episode and then that episode, it's like, that seems really inconsistent. And it's because it's not about a particular topic. But when you say, oh, this is a show about our feelings. And I was like, oh, then it is, even though we talk about different things we feel things about, it's consistent that we're talking about our feelings. And so that made a huge difference for me. I've thought about I thought it would be cool to have an Apple Tech YouTube channel. There's some really good ones out there that I like, but I don't want to be a copy of what other people are doing. Like, I can think of Renee Ritchie and Dr. Snazzy, and those two channels come to mind. And I'm like, I really like what they do. And I don't want to do what they do because they do what they do so well. And those two channels are different from each other. So that's a thing I've thought about, but like, I haven't found the niche that has made me want to pull out a camera and start doing something. Like, I just haven't found what that is. And for a long time, and my current job started satisfying this itch a while ago, but for, the whole time that I worked at Apple, I had this itch to do something. I loved getting my hands on hardware, and I loved disassembling and reassembling computers and, applying thermal paste. I get so much satisfaction out of that. But there's not a lot of money in being an Apple Store genius. Not a lot of money at all. And so, I always thought about development, and I don't know any language. Well, I don't want to say I don't know any languages, but I'm not a developer, not at all. And for a long time, I was like, if I have the idea of a thing that I want to make, then I can go and learn a language. Because it's like, what good is learning a language if you don't know what to say? And I really think about a month ago, sitting in the airport, feeling like a second-class citizen, or I don't know. That was internal. That was not that was all my feelings. But I came up with an idea of a thing that I might want to try to develop.
So it still doesn't quite answer the question, though, of why.
Why?
Right? I mean, we're both of us have had thoughts around different things to do and passions and things of that nature. And I'll pause and go into some of the thoughts that I've had as well. Like I don't think I've disclosed the naming on the show. So there isn't a to-be coming YouTube channel that is in the works from my perspective that is going to focus on a number of different things, but part of it is a goal of either being inspirational to other people who have decided to become more active later in life, or just want a glimpse into trying to develop a mindset around being a decent person, or being able to progress toward goals that you might feel like you can't progress toward. Like overall, if you wanted to kind of make an underlying theme, it would be some level of inspiration, right? And that's simple enough. That's a good starting point for why I would want to create a YouTube channel in the first place. And maybe it will fulfill that goal. Maybe it won't. It doesn't matter. Or it doesn't really matter, because to me it's all about the fun of creating the videos anyway. But with that particular endeavor, I at least came from a starting point of what is it that I really want this channel to be. And I know with the show, we came from a different starting point and took a while to get to, as you were describing, the whole focus on how we feel about different topics. Those two examples alone still don't really create a cohesive, why do I want to do these endeavors?
I know why I want to do them.
Okay.
I think, well, I was going to say, I feel like you asked me why, and I gave you the what and the why, because I was focused on the what. But the why is, I want to put something out into the world that other people really like, whether it's, whether they find inspiration from it or whether they find enjoyment from it. I want to put something out into the world that people like, and they see me in it, or they say, well, I like this guy. Like he's an interesting person. I like what he's putting out here. And something that would allow me to better myself, and myself, the betterment of myself is something that someone says, oh yeah, I can better myself in this way too. Or I did better myself in this way, and watching this it makes me interested, or it reminds me of how I did this in my life, and that makes me feel good. That's kind of the why for me. And then, I'd like to make a fair amount of extra money doing that.
Well, it changes how I was going to lead off my next point. I was going to say the latter point, but now I have to state the prior to last point instead of the latter point. The focus on wanting to put something out there for the betterment of self. That's the answer I was looking for. Just because, as we've talked about multiple different projects, all of them have had this same unifying theme. And we haven't overly discussed it, but it's always come back to that at some level. It's some level of self-improvement. Now, you could say that it's focused on improvement mentally in some regards, physically on some endeavors, etc., but it's always some level of self-improvement. That goes hand in hand with providing some level of inspiration. Even if it's just entertainment value, it's the same mindset and goal driving forward. It's creating something that either somebody is just going to watch for the sake of entertainment, or they're going to watch it and think, I maybe want to try that, or I maybe want to try to do that thing that I've been putting off, because if this guy can do this ridiculously simple thing or ridiculously difficult thing at that age, then certainly I can, go out there and take a step and try it.
There's this this is going into the, I agree with that. And especially even if it's just like, this makes people feel good just for the entertainment of it, the entertainment value. One of the ideas I had, well, I won't go into that detail yet, but the money part of it is interesting. It's like, I don't, it's like, it's not this is not from a materialistic desire, but I was thinking about every once in a while, like if somebody says, oh, the Powerball is, X $100 million, what would you do with it? And it's like, people do, it's like in, Office Space. They ask you this question as an exercise to figure out what your job should be. And, the main character, Peterman, he's like, I do nothing. He's like, I wouldn't do anything. And it got me thinking, I was like, well, what would I do in that situation? And pretty recently, somebody was like, "Hey, do you wanna chip in for a Powerball?" And I chipped in like $15, and I think we ended up winning like $50. Anyway, not life changing, but it was just like, I would, if at the end of the day I had, after taxes took the lump sum of like $15 million. Well, I would certainly self-employ. And I would think to myself, I was like, well, I'll go to the gym every day. But I couldn't just depend on myself to do that. I'd probably like hire a personal trainer, because, if I have the appointment, then I know that I have to, I need the accountability. And so I just got to thinking, I was like, there's this, I took that exercise and was like, wow, what can I do in my life that gives me those things? That gives me that, what can I change today? And this is where I'm like trying, it's like, instead of using that mental exercise to figure out what it is that I want to do, now that I know what I want to do, if I had a $50 million in the bank, okay, what do I do today to do the thing that I think that would allow me to do? I don't know do you follow that?
Yeah, I think so.
And,
I mean, it's
so it's like, what is it that you want to do that you think you need the money to do? Now, how do you do that without the money?
Or maybe the better phrasing is just, how do you take a step toward what that thing is without necessarily having the funding?
Yes. And so I've been doing that as well, because I don't think I'm going to get Flappy Bird's lucky. I don't think I'm going to be, I don't know. Have you ever seen the kids that play, when I say kids, they're in their 20s now, but the folks that play Minecraft and have YouTube channels? My kids watch this. Is what my kids are funding their lives, because they watch the skip ads on their channels. Like, there's a kid in Texas. He's in his mid-20s. His net worth is like $25 million.
I don't know that I've seen any specifically. I know there's a specific one that my son has been watching that I'm sure has some level of income from it, but
who's your son?
I haven't done any research. Mumbo Jumbo.
Mumbo Jumbo. Okay, I haven't heard of that one. My kids watch Preston Plays and Unspeakable.
Mumbo Jumbo is apparently from the UK.
Okay, both of these guys I think are in Texas. And Unspeakable, like, he's even to the point where he no longer, I don't think his channel, I don't think he does any Minecraft videos anymore. It's just him and his friends that are in their 20s doing ridiculous things in his, McMansion, wherever he is in Texas. Like, I think one of the last things I saw them do was they filled the house with ball pit balls, when you would go to Showbiz Pizza, like, filled the house, like, unbelievable number of balls. And they just do stuff like that, and then they're making so much money because I think they have something like, I think they have 100 million viewers. No, not 100 million. I think they're in the 10 million subscribers. Because they blew away the gold plaque. Anyway, I digress. But I don't think anything like that's going to happen to me. I'm not planning on anything like that happening to me. But what I've done is I've taken that exercise, figured out what it is that I want, and then I was like, well, let's work from a realistic standpoint. Let's get rid of the money roadblock, because right now I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. And that's great. I'm happy for me. and I'm trying to take that we're back on mental blocks. I'm trying to take the mental block of, I don't have the money to do this, I don't have the money to be self-employed. It was like, okay, you're not self-employed, but you do work from home. What can you do in your life to make this happen?
It's funny how many things come back to that concept of mental blocks. Almost every endeavor that I'm interested in pursuing, and all of which I've made some progress in pursuing, but almost all of them have met some sort of roadblock or point of, we'll just say point of pause, because I feel like the alliteration's fun. That's always driven by, I don't have the time today, I'll pick it up tomorrow, or some other similar excuse. None of which is necessarily inaccurate either, but it illustrates that mental blocks aren't purely a lack of willingness to get started on something, but are also just as much a priority scheduling exercise as anything else. Because we'll make time for the things that we decide are priorities, and other things will be the things left by the wayside, and we rationalize why we're ignoring those things as we go forward. And the only reason I even bring that up is I am still slowly making progress on an app. I don't think I've shared this. So the original idea that I had for an app, I've decided to place on hold, and I started building a new one that it would be more useful for me in general day to day at the moment. And I've made good progress, significantly better progress than I made with the previous app idea. I don't find myself in a place mentally to be able to focus on it in the wake of everything else that I do for my actual real professional life.
Your jobby job.
Yeah. I need some of my other endeavors to be a break from sitting in front of a computer, and so I find that to be the lowest priority. Now, I still make progress occasionally, but it's so slow compared to if I were to just take a month of being able to focus on it and not deal with everything else. Prioritization sucks.
Yeah, there are from time to time I keep thinking, it's like, what smart person that I work with is going to decide to come up with an idea and gather like a group of a few people who are like, let's do this. Because like, I'm not the guy that comes up with that idea. That's just not who I am. I'm the person who are like, hey, we need your skills here. Please do that. And then I'll like come back and be like, here's how we can do it better, faster, stronger. Like, that's what I'm good at. Like, so I keep waiting for somebody to do that, but because I don't want, like, it's not even that I think that I can't do that. I'm just uninterested in being the idea guy.
This has been a fairly illuminating conversation because I tend to do fairly well with ideas.
I know.
It's refinement that a lot of times becomes questionable because I get lost in the idea. Does that make sense?
It does. I 100% understand that. I am romantically involved with a visionary. And the sort of details that you have to do just to, the bare minimum detail sort of things, she doesn't like it. She can do it. She's an intelligent person. She can do it. It's just she's like looking to outsource that as soon as possible. And for me, I'm like in my wheelhouse. Like, sadly, we're in different industries, but in my wheelhouse, I'm like, yes, I want the details. I want to document them for you. Yeah. So, yeah, I very much like the process and the refinement. I mean, the whole time I worked at Apple, it was like, how do I make the next interaction better? How do I go? I mean, like, I got to the point where I could do that job with a blindfold, both hands tied behind my back, blindfolded. It was so easy. It was the other people around me that made it. Like, I love the other people around me, but they're the ones who made it harder because, when I'm over here seeing, like, having, 5 successful reservations in an hour, and the guy next to me is only doing 1. I'm like, that makes all of our jobs harder.
Yeah, it's funny. I tried to take a semi-technical approach to meshing those types of inequalities, for lack of better phrasing, to make the overall environment feel better.
Yeah.
So I recognize it for sure. Like, it was one of those things where I spent so much time trying to figure out how individuals played off of each other in a way to make the experience better for everybody involved at different points of the day.
Like, the hard part of that, specifically, the hard part about working at the Genius Bar, it wasn't the technical stuff. Like, the technical stuff was easy. The hard part was being able to manage multiple interactions at once, and like being able to go back and forth between them and do that and do it successfully, and like make everyone feel like they are or do that without making anyone feel deprioritized. That was the hard part. And once I figured that out, it didn't take me long to figure that, but once I figured that out, I did really well at that job. It made that job so easy for me. The thing that made it hard was when other people weren't doing that. And I don't want to say they weren't pulling their weight. It's just that they didn't know how to. I don't even think it's a time management thing. I don't know. It's several things. So
yeah, it's not time management. The thing that I saw most people struggle with is context switching.
Yes,
because that's what you're constantly having to do with those interactions, and we're not wired to do that naturally. As a matter of fact, there are a number of studies that say that we can't do so. Actually.
Yeah, multitasking is not a thing.
It's the biggest lie we try to tell ourselves.
You can. I tried to use the term switch tasking, where you're like, all right, I can do this one task. We're unitaskers. I can do this one task, and then I'm going to switch. And I'm going to get to a place where it's automated. It's now I'm waiting on a progress bar. I'm waiting on a thing, and so I'm going to start the next thing. But do you know how many people would sit there and like, I guess the time management part is involved is like, all right, if you're doing a 15-minute session and you're 10 minutes into the session, this is the point where like, I need to I don't need to finish this session right in 5 minutes. It's awesome when I can. I loved it when I could, but I was like, how am I going to start the next one in the next 5 minutes or sooner? And not make this person feel deprioritized. And I figured it out most of the time. And then they promoted me to somewhere else. And then that's like, well, my hands are tied. It's like I could get, I could go into the weeds on this one. But you were in that position, and you know how your hands were tied in that. There were some solutions to that problem, but you didn't get to, they weren't ones that you could explore.
Yeah, I feel like the early part of when I was in the position was much better than what it became. Because the early part of it, there was a little more leeway to try to explore things, but it was quickly changed. And then it was just downhill from there.
Yeah, I never thought I could explore, one of the options to me was like, if you doubled everyone's pay, then you could get better people. And I don't want to say these people are bad, but it attracts a different kind of talent. It's what, it's the different, it's like, that's the problem, this goes back to, this is a problem with everyone's at support. If you pay more money, you can demand more, or you can raise the bar of what is expected of that person.
Well, it's the lesson that most people still haven't learned until they're middle-aged. It's you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
When you have a certain amount of disposable income, you start to be able to make decisions based on what actually is better overall. And you may choose to invest in a home or a vehicle or an entertainment system or a computer. Like, take your pick. Take any one item. Doesn't matter. The more money you put into that item, generally speaking, the better that item is going to be. You get what you pay for. And it's a matter of, as you get older, you understand what you want to prioritize because of what it means for impact to you in general.
Yeah, I prioritize the trim model with the V8 engine, but not leather seats. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.